Hello everyone, I'm Will Anderson, President and CEO of Blue Ridge PBS. We have developed this program to bring you the interesting people and the characters in Southwest Virginia, and we just want to sit around and talk and find out about these great people in our area. This is One-on-One with Senator Mark Peake. Hello again, I'm Will Anderson, and we're here at the Academy Center of the Arts here in Lynchburg with a wonderful new friend of mine, Senator Mark Peake. Senator, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Will. Thank you for coming here to Lynchburg and in this beautiful facility to talk to one of the characters. Not necessarily interesting, but probably a character.
I think you're interesting because I did a little background, and I find that almost everyone is a character, or at least has some character.
We hope. We try.
No, I think one of the things I want to do in this show is to bring out who the person is, especially for you. You're a public figure. You've been in the Senate for a while now, since 2017. Yeah. From the special election on to now, you were recently elected to the new Congressional District 8, right?
Yeah, Senate District 8.
Senate, yeah. So what's different in that district now?
A big difference. So my old district, first of all, let me give you a little background, Will. Grew up in Roanoke. Went to James Madison Junior High School, a stone's throw from your studios. Absolutely. There in Roanoke. So very familiar with your station and what y'all have done, the good work you've done for the region for a long, long time, and appreciate you coming up here to talk with me. Of course, James Madison Junior High School, Patrick Henry fighting Patriots, and then on to Virginia Tech and Washington Lee for law school. So kind of my background. And then moved to Lynchburg after law school in 1990. I've been working as a lawyer here since then, and met my wife a couple years after I moved here. We've had 5 children since then. Then I ran for Senate in 2017. That first district they had redistricted in 2011. Democrats controlled the Senate, and so they were in charge of the Senate districts. And they gerrymandered as best they could. I currently have 8 counties from Lynchburg all the way to Goochland, just outside of Richmond. Now, after redistricting by the bipartisan commission, it's all of Lynchburg, all of Bedford, and all of Campbell. I used to have to drive 2.5 hours to meet with school boards and my constituents in some of the counties. Now I drive 15 minutes.
That makes it easy.
It's I can't drive more than an hour and still be in the district. So it's a great area. It's all covered by same newspaper for the most part, same television stations for the most part. So it's a great district.
Yeah, because I know some senators have expanded their area. Yeah. Senator Hackworth has a long area to drive.
He had a big one, and Pillion, they were, no matter what in that area, it's a 200,000+ per district. And the more rural the area, the further you got to go, the more counties you have to bring in.
I find it interesting that we all think, as just regular constituents or citizens, that our legislators are full-time legislators. Yeah. How do you find time to still be a lawyer and serve the community as a senator?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits of Virginia, is that we are part-time citizen legislators, and a lot of us are still working. I'm still in the middle of my work career. My wife works. Some we have are retired or wealthy, and that's one of the drawbacks, is that we get a salary of $18,000. That's it for the year, and we have to do our job, or you've made your money elsewhere. It does kind of cut it out for folks at the lower income level. You can't live on that, and it's hard to run. And so that's one of the drawbacks. But we do not want to go to a full-time legislature. We make enough of a mess and cause enough problems in our 45-day and 60-day sessions. I can't imagine the trouble we would cause if we were there any longer.
Well, I think you're doing a fine job. Obviously, so does the population in the area. As far as elections go, you're probably pretty safe where you are. Let's talk about your family life, because I find it fascinating that you have 5 kids, you and your wife,
Yes.
Lila, 5 kids, quads,
Yeah.
quadruplets. Is that right? Quadruplets?
Quadruplets, yes.
How, and they're all roughly, I guess, all out of college now and that sort of thing. How do you handle that?
Well, it's been a blast. My wife, Lila, came to Lynchburg from Texas to go to Randolph-Macon Women's College, and then she was going to Lynchburg College nursing school when I met her, and we dated for a couple of years, then got married, and then our first pregnancy resulted in four children. So that was quite an adventure, and had tons of help from the community, our church, everybody chipped in, babysat, did all kinds of things.
Did you get a good mix of boys and girls in that 4?
3 boys, 1 girl.
Do you call them A, B, C, and D? Or
They did until they were born and we got to name them. It was A, B, C, and D. And then, of course, 2 years later, we had our baby and final child, Lauren. So she's just 2 years behind them, 1 year behind them in school, 2 years in age. And we've stopped at this point.
That's
Well,
a good
I think
point.
we're going to stick at 5. So they're
Yeah.
26 and 24 and scattered about. We have one still in Lynchburg who is in his 3rd year of law school at Liberty Law School. So
following in the dad's footsteps.
and then we have one in Roanoke who's teaching at Head Start in Roanoke. Youngest girl's in New York working Fox News, producing. Like
Yankee.
Lisa back there. Yes. And lawyer in Richmond, and a son working. He went to VMI's, living in Raleigh, doing something productive in the construction industry.
That's fantastic.
And my wife still works full-time as a nurse.
That amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously, your commitment to public service. I also enjoyed reading that your commitment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I think all of our elected officials feel that way, except you make that one of the first points.
A lot of people want to help. I think we all want to help. We want to help people who need help, and we want things to go better. We want the Commonwealth to be the greatest state that it can. But we have to remember that we are a limited government. Federal government's supposed to be limited. State government's supposed to be limited. We have our core functions, and it's supposed to be up to the citizens to get out there, do the best that they can, enjoy the fruits of their labor, and succeed and fail on their own.
How do you say limited government? How do you take an existing larger government and shrink those down? How does that? Because everybody talks about making amendments to bring in something new. How do you go about shrinking that?
It is very difficult to shrink government, and that you don't see much of it. An effort at the federal level, we'll see. A lot of what I do, what my goal is to keep government from expanding, to keep government from infringing on more of our rights, more of our freedoms guaranteed by the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So you have to look at each piece of legislation. Is it a core function of government? Is it constitutional? And is it taking away someone's freedom to help someone else out? And so you have to weigh all of those factors, and that's kind of how I go about looking at legislation.
Is it difficult in a way to bring in others to have that same mindset, because others are thinking, let's expand, or let's do a money grab, something like that? How do you
It's a major fight. Yeah, it's a major fight, and that's what you see. That's some of the division in D.C. That's some of the division that we're going to have coming up in Richmond with the Democratic-controlled Senate and House with a Republican-controlled governor. You saw this just this past year with the amended budget. The governor, we have surpluses. The governor and a lot of Republicans wanted to give a lot of that surplus back to the taxpayers. It's not the government's money, it's the taxpayers' money. We shouldn't have surpluses. But we also do have obligations. Mental health is a major concern, public safety, taking care of our law enforcement officers, and education. Those are core functions. We'd have to provide the necessary funds for those, but we don't want to take too much money, because if we take it from you, you can't spend it on what you want to do.
I heard the governor is wanting to do a 10% cut or prepare a 10% cut for agencies across the board upcoming now, because there could be some financial deficits coming because of revenue forecasts. How's that going to affect your district?
Well, it'll affect the entire Commonwealth, but first off, if you have cuts, it affects public education. If you have to cut teacher salary or what you're able to send to the communities that they then match or use their funds, combine them with federal and state funds. Public safety, will they have the money to hire new officers? Will they be able to patrol the streets as frequently as they need to? Construction on road projects, school projects. So cuts are very challenging.
Hopefully, those revenue forecasts will stay where they are. That would be great for everyone.
We've been very fortunate, but we had $4 billion and $6 billion. And I can't get all the numbers confused. We had $8 to $10 billion surpluses over the past 2 years, and those days are gone. And it's one thing when you're fighting over where you're going to spend all this money. It's another thing when you're fighting over where you're going to cut this money.
It's easier if it's one-time money. If it's recurring money, then you have trouble.
And the governor and the legislature did a very good job of making sure it was one-time expenditures on most of those things. But cutting hurts everyone, and then you really hear some screaming.
Absolutely. So what is the role of the state legislators to the local? How can you help the local? And is there a separation there, or are you helping control what happens in the local area?
No, they're completely autonomous. We do have the Dillon rule in the state of Virginia, so the state has to authorize what localities can do, which we have done, but they have limited taxing authorities. Personal property, vehicles, and real estate are their main sources of revenue. But no, they run their city, they run their county through their board of supervisors or their city council, how they want to do it. And a lot of places have elected school boards. They run their schools through their elected school boards. We set parameters, and of course, funding flows from the Commonwealth to the localities, but they raise a lot of their own money as well.
As a part-time legislator, I guess, it's always full-time, I know it is, because you probably are always thinking about it. Are you aware of what's going on at the school board level, the county council level, all of that stuff? Do you keep in tune with that? And how do you bring that back to Richmond to say, this is what's going on in my community?
Absolutely. I think just being involved in the community, you know what's going on in your community, and that's one of the benefits of having now a more compact district. It's very easy for me to keep up with what's going on in Lynchburg, Bedford, and Campbell, and of course, Roanoke and surrounding areas through the TV and newspapers. You know, when I had Goochland and Fluvanna, they're covered by Charlottesville or Richmond. It's much tougher to keep up with, but we need to know what issues they're facing. Certainly our schools. Now we have learning loss from COVID and them being out. We need to be aware of that, how we can best provide the money, how it can be spent to make up for those losses. We meet with our city council and board of supervisors, meet with the school boards for all of our localities. VDOT, our transportation commission, that's all part of our job, is to meet with everyone that's affected by what we do. How do you
think upcoming the next couple of years anyways, how do you feel that Southwest Virginia, and that Southwest Virginia line to Nova line moves depending on who you are.
We're not going to agree with Kilgore and Pillion and Hackworth. Southwest Virginia includes Roanoke and goes all the way to Lee County. They want to cut us out.
I agree, being Roanoke Station and all of that. Yeah, of course, they even the Tobacco Commission doesn't include our area.
Yeah.
But how are we positioned upcoming with the leadership that's in place, and whether it's, and I'm not talking about necessarily this time of party line leadership, I'm talking about geographic leadership.
Yes. It's a major concern, of course. We just had the Republicans lost the House of Delegates. Terry Kilgore was second in command of the House, and that's a huge benefit for Southwest Virginia, and of course the rest of the delegation in the House. Israel O'Quinn, Will Moorfield, Will Wampler, great guys who had a lot of influence. Now the Democrats are in charge, and Sam Rasool is the last, and Creed Eads in Charlottesville, and then Sam Rasool, and there are no other senators, and he's the furthest west delegate, and he'll have some impact, and he can help Roanoke, but you see Travis Hackworth trying to work with Don Scott, the new leader, and Terry Kilgore works well with everyone. Senator Pillion, Senator Hackworth do, and we'll do our best to work with folks. The state knows, even the folks in Northern Virginia, Tidewater, they know that we have to take care of Southwest Virginia, that we have to bring that economy up, that we have to get them firing on all cylinders again, and it's vital to the Commonwealth that they be productive and they to be self-sufficient. So I think everyone realizes that, but with the lack of representatives in the majority, it can be a problem.
Well, I appreciate what you do for our citizens as a direct reflection of who we are and as a community. I think the positions that you take do just that, reflect the communities of Southwest Virginia. I hope we can keep them resonating to Northern Virginia and say, listen, we're a part of Virginia as well. I want to move out of political, and I want to know more about you. First of all, I want to let everyone know that we share something. We're both wearing the University of South Carolina ring. It's not necessarily your ring, but I feel like we're Wonder Twins right now. We could do something with those rings. What do you do in your spare time?
There isn't a whole lot of spare time when you work full time, have 5 kids, and a wife, and then do some politics on the side. I enjoy yard work, gardening, getting outside, and I play golf. My wife says too much.
How often do you get to play golf?
Well, I hadn't played I did not play much this year. I would try and play a couple times a month in the summer and spring, but
are you one of those guys that'll pick up any foursome that's around, or do you have your regular guys?
Regular group on Saturday mornings that I try and play with when I can, but during an election year, there's always somewhere to be on Saturday, so I didn't get to play as much, but I have a group that I enjoy.
One of our board members said she used to play golf an awful lot. Now she's way into pickleball. I cannot bring myself to do pickleball. It feels like a mini tennis or something like that.
I'm way too young for that.
Exactly.
Way too young for that. But back to it. And of course, I'm a Virginia Tech Hokie fan. Don't make as many games as I used to. Had 3 of my kids graduated from Tech, and of course enjoy watching their football and basketball. And it's my dad. My dad went to South Carolina. So I lost my Tech ring at a game in 2019, and so I've resorted to my dad's ring.
Well, that's a testament of your love for your father, and I applaud that. I think we look back and we're a reflection again of who our parents were and what their values are, and they teach those values. We teach them down. I think you do that well.
My mother's passed away, dad's passed away. There's not a day goes by where I'd like to ask them a question about this or history or what they think about something. When people talk about schools these days and education, that is where I ultimately go. I say, if you want to have good schools, you need good parents. And your parents have to teach the kids to respect authority, instill in them the desire to learn and how they can better themselves through an education and the opportunities out there. And I think that's one of the major problems we have with kids these days. They're not taught to respect authority. They're not taught the value of a good education and of hard work. And I really see that when I go out. We go to a lot of schools, we visit a lot of places, and that's one of the big concerns I have.
You and I never had metal detectors in our schools, did we?
No, they had paddles.
Yes, they did.
They had paddles and they used them. And kids
and I
behaved.
know that. How do I know that?
And kids behaved. No discipline, no respect. People don't learn. It's not that tricky, but folks are afraid to apply a little bit of common sense to what we know works.
There's a new crop of folks coming to Richmond this year. I think the makeup and what's going to happen in Richmond will be interesting to see how it develops. What do you think, because you and I are of the age that we sort of still are making the rules for the generations that are in school now, but what do you think that the pandemic has done to that generation that was in school during the pandemic? What do you think that's going to bring?
It was, well, first of all, I had 4 kids graduating in 2020 who did it virtually. It was terrible, and their last year was virtual. So it was very disappointing for them not to be in class with their classmates and not to actually go through graduations. The younger kids, obviously we're hearing the horror stories of 3rd and 4th graders who can't read or write or do basic addition, subtraction. And they were not learning at home, and they're not learning from a computer screen at home. So we do have some funds. We've got to invest in making up this learning loss, and the governor's aware of it. I think everyone's aware of it. So that's going to be one of our major focuses. But I think hopefully people learn you don't shut everything down. You don't shut the schools down. You deal with the illness. You take the best precautions you can, but you have got to go forward with learning, living your life, working, doing the things that we normally do.
I think the holistic approach, again, to these kids who missed effectively 2 years of the traditional schooling, I guess, that's going to have a lasting mental, emotional, social, because they all leaned on going to the phone, the video screen to getting their information. We've committed to that at Blue Ridge PBS to give the educational video aspect to those places where those kids are going. But it's all over the place. Social media is huge. I hope that we as a community can look at what's going to be happening with our kids as they emerge through all of this. And I think that we have a commitment to looking at what's happening. Kids don't even want to go to school now. They feel like they don't even have to go to school.
It's set a terrible, terrible precedent and a terrible attitude. First of all, the emotional problems for kids, not being able to interact, being stuck at home. You see a lot of behavioral issues going back. But the other part, and it's nationwide, but it's in the Commonwealth as well, is kids aren't going back to school. They're just not going. They stayed at home, and nobody's making them go. It is a tremendous problem we're going to have to address. You cannot learn at home. You need to be in school, unless you're being homeschooled.
Unless you have to.
Unless you've got somebody at home teaching you, but that's not what's happening. It's the poor students are not returning to class, and I'll tell you, it was a terrible idea to not make workers go back to the office as well. It's been horrible for DC, horrible for some major cities. These, I will say, liberal governments, work from home, work from home. People don't work from home as hard as they work at the office.
I know even some of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS businesses in Washington, they're just now coming back to the office. Yeah. We didn't have that luxury at Blue Ridge PBS. We all had to come back in or nothing was going to happen. Yeah. So most of our people had to work. I think we worked from home for about 2 weeks, and then we had to bring some people back in. The PBS Appalachia group in Southwest, they don't have a home built yet. So they are working from home and trying the best they can out there, but I can't even send them a letter because their studio isn't built yet. Yeah. It's interesting because we received a lot of productivity from some who worked from home and did some of that, especially if they were like my crew here who actually were out in the field and trying to bring that information back in. But the workers that were usually in the office, that office interaction went away.
Another aspect, if you're a young employee like my kids going to work for a company, a bank or whatever it may be, and a lawyer, if you're not there to talk to other people with experience who know what's going on, how do you learn? You can't learn in a vacuum, and having people to bounce ideas off of, to steer you in the right direction, it's just invaluable. engineering facilities. I mean, it is best to have human contact to discuss ideas with.
Senator Peake, we have just a few more minutes to chat. I mean, we could go all day. I'm sure you and I probably have a lot of things in common that we could spend all day chatting about it.
I'm a lawyer and a politician. I could talk for hours.
and I'm the president of a TV station. We could give me a microphone and let's go.
That's right.
Is there anything that you would like for, at least at this time, to folks know what's happening in your area, or what you plan on doing, or what you'd like to say?
It's an honor, obviously, to represent anyone in the state legislature, and I was honored to represent the 22nd district, and now looking forward to representing the 8th, Lynchburg, Bedford, Campbell, but the entire Commonwealth. And I think we run for office because we feel like we can make a difference, make things better, and that's what I hope to do. And never forget that I represent everyone, not Republican, not Democrat, but everyone in the district. I do my best to meet with any person that asks for a meeting, to meet with any group that asks for a meeting. And when we're in Richmond, my door is always open. People come through the hallways, they can come in and talk to me. I think that's part of one of our biggest responsibilities as an elected official is to actually be available and accessible to the people we represent. And that's what I'm not a policy genius. Even as a lawyer, some of the details, we got specialists for that, but I think it's our obligation to express our ideas, to let people know where we stand on the issues. I hate politicians who won't answer tough questions. As a lawyer, when a judge asks you a tough question, you got to answer the question.
Right.
And people, well, just tell them what you want them to hear. No, you ask me a question, I'm going to answer the question. I think politicians, you watch those debates, it's ridiculous. They won't answer the question. So I try to answer questions. I'll meet with anyone. I try and talk to the folks. And I look forward to talking with you at any time. And I appreciate the area that you cover, which is a lot of the area that I represent. And tell everybody back in the Star City, I said hello. Y'all have got a lot of good legislators in that area and down in deep Southwest Virginia. I think we do a very good job of representing this portion of the state. And aside from Republican, Democrat, you've got the regional issues, Northern Virginia battling Tidewater about how much of all the resources they're going to keep. And we've got to make sure that our part of the state is taken care of as well.
Senator, you're singing our song.
Yeah.
I again, thanks for being here with us on One-on-One. I want to do this again. I think it's important that we continue to do these type of conversations. I invite you to come visit us in the Star City. You know exactly where we are.
I know where to find you.
And come visit us, and we sure do appreciate it.
Thank you, Will.
We'll see you next time when I'm sure we'll have another riveting guest on One-on-One. I'm Will Anderson for Blue Ridge PBS.